And welcome to the monthly weather roundup here. I'm Joe Martucci. He is New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. We are recapping the month of January that was. For you, you were telling me it's been quite a month for cross-country skiing so far. And given the way that the cold's been and where it's going, you might be able to do that for a while, as long as your poles don't get stuck in the ice as you're going through.
Yeah, I'm actually waiting for it to warm up a little so the pack will soften. The skiing after the first set of weekend storms was great. It was shallow and soft. Not so great since the big storm of the 25th, but I'm foolish enough that I've been out there.
Well, I feel like I feel like generally this past month's probably, as the global snow lab king, probably good to have some home cooking and some snow in your own backyard. You don't have to see it on satellite; you can just see it in your backyard.
If it had just been cold this month with no snow, that was such a waste of cold air.
I agree. I mean,
As it is, we could have popped a few more storms and gotten more snow, but
yeah,
I I don't want to be greedy here. This has been the last half of January,
yeah.
and a portion of December has had its share of wintry weather. People don't forget though that the first half of January temperatures averaged above normal.
Yeah, yeah, they did, and we'll get into that. But it
Yeah.
wasn't. It might have felt like a whole month of cold, but it really wasn't. I do want to start off with the wintry smorgasbord that was January 25th. I mean, depending on where you were in the state, you saw snow, sleet, freezing rain, plain rain, snow that was like powder. Colorado, you had concrete falling out of the sky. Just I mean, everything. And there's a lot to unpack with this. I think what was most impressive to me from a weather perspective was how cold it was when it was sleeting. I mean, we had 15, 16, 17 degrees and sleeting. That's just something I don't know when the last time was. Maybe but that's something that did not happen often. But across the state, I wouldn't say this was a major snowstorm, but this was a big snowstorm. It's not an all timer, but
Oh no.
it's definitely worth writing home about.
Oh yeah. This was an impactful winter
Yeah.
storm. That's the way you put it. Now, one thing it didn't have was coastal influences
Yes.
with wind and flooding. So
Right.
we take that off the table. As you said, it had about everything else. The areas that didn't see 14 to 16, outside 18 inches of snow, areas where it barely sleeted, if it sleeted at all, that's a major storm. But everywhere else had the water equivalent had it been all snow of
Yeah.
that much snow. So if you had 8, 9 inches of snow and then 2 inches of sleet, the sleet is about a 2 to 1 to 3 to 1 ratio of sleet to liquid, as opposed to the old 10 inches of snow to 1 inch of liquid. Everyone knows how dense that is. So if most areas of the state had 1.5 to 1 3/4 inches of liquid, if you melted it all down. And
Yeah.
along the coast, Ocean County in particular, closer to 2 inches. So if you go with just a simple 10 to 1 ratio, and some storms are more like 15 to 1, we
Yeah.
could have had 1.5 to 2 feet of snow everywhere in the state. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. And just going to that snow ratio too. I mean, I have to imagine in the morning on Sunday, that snow ratio had to be higher than 15 to 1, right? I mean, it was coming down like it was powder.
But it was very fine. I
Yeah,
found
I
it,
guess it
I
was
found it surprisingly dense, actually,
really
in the
I think
morning.
it also to an extent, depending on where you were.
Exactly.
It was super light, and this is like this is why we have the monthly weather roundup to get real nerdy on this. So there was one part I was doing a live stream at noon. Interestingly, it was warmer. It was in the 20s on the Parkway corridor in at the coast, and it was snowing, but it was in the teens in Camden and Trenton, and it was sleeting. That was pretty incredible. I'm not kidding you. I know you're looking at me like two heads. That was actually what was happening. I mean, you can look at the observations.
Oh no, I'm not doubting you. I
Oh,
mean,
okay, okay, yeah,
we learned a couple things with this storm. The atmosphere is a layer cake. We've talked
Yes.
about that with cold air drainage.
Yeah.
But to think that at 6,000 feet above the surface, it was above freezing
Yeah.
enough to melt those snowflakes that started higher in the atmosphere.
Right.
There's enough layer of above freezing air to melt it. And then you add thousands of feet for it to fall through when it was sleeting. Now, down
Yeah.
along the coast and further south, there was periods of freezing rain, then
Right.
plain rain,
Right.
where the whole lower atmosphere got up
Right.
near the freezing
Right.
point. But
I
you started this off by saying how unusual it was temperature-wise, even for snow.
yeah.
We were getting 2 inch an hour snow at 10 degrees
Yeah.
here at my place in central Jersey. And that's incredibly unusual.
Yeah.
To have that much moisture in the atmosphere at such cold temperatures
Right.
is very unusual. You have to really just have a flux of moisture in there. And it was bringing warm air aloft with it, but it could not scour away that cold air at the surface for even when, you mentioned 15 degrees sleet, and it got up some areas to 20 degrees by the end of the
Yeah.
event, up to 20 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a disproportionately impactful
Yeah.
event for just having 3, 6, or 10 inches of snow
Yeah.
because of the sleet and, as we'll talk about, the cold air that has followed it that has
Yeah.
not allowed it to budge.
No, it's still, we're recording this on the 31st of January and we're still an ice sheet across, New Jersey with this. Just two points with this. One, off the top of your head, I didn't ask you before, off the top of your head, is there a similar storm? Can we compare this to a storm in the past? Can you think of anything? Someone asked me on Reddit and I was struggling.
That's a great question. There was a big sleet storm back in 2007, particularly in southeastern Pennsylvania. It closed I-78 in Pennsylvania for a week. I was in central Jersey. I saw a neighbor's gutter collapse
Ooh,
under the weight of the sleet
yeah.
as I was out there in it. That in terms of sleet, that one will stick in my memory bank for a long time, and there have been others. But for that combination, you almost you could go back to the storm of 93 in March,
The blizzard of 93.
the blizzard of 93,
Okay.
because I was again in central Jersey. I was at Rutgers. I could walk on top. We were sledding on top. We had a foot of snow and
Yeah.
then sleet and then more freezing rain than I experienced with this event. And you could literally run and get on your sled and go along. So that one was even a bigger storm.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's a all timer,
And it
that,
had the wind into as well. Yeah,
sure.
it's one of the all-timers.
Yeah. I
But I
mean,
mean, this was a junior version
mm,
of that, I
okay.
suppose, in
Yeah.
some
And
respects.
snowfall totals, we should just say, Monmouth County was pretty much 8 to 12. Most of Ocean was 8 to 12. And then once you got to Southern Ocean, it got to more like 6 to 8. And then all the way down towards Lower Cape, where it did change over to sleet and rain first, it was still about 3 to 4 inches,
Hmm.
snow, but not as much as Northwestern. So it kind of broke at the end of the day, it kind of broke down climatologically the way these things go. Southeast gets less, Northwest gets more. But to your point, and this will, what you were saying a minute ago, and this will transition to the cold. I mean, man, like we still kind of wasted the storm a little bit because we were so cold leading up to it. And to think that we even changed over the rain or we changed over the freezing rain in parts. I mean, this low pressure system, I counted at one point, was only 50 miles east of Atlantic City, well within what we call the benchmark. We won't get into that, but the benchmark of how these nor'easters kind of go. If
Yeah.
if it was at more of a regular path, which would have been a little more east, I mean, yeah, I mean, we would have been talking about a foot plus for most of New Jersey. So,
Oh, yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean, like, so, if you're a snow lover, yes, good storm, but it could have been more. It could have been more, and it wasn't. So anyway, let's get into the cold, because I think that's the second biggest story, or maybe even the biggest story, depending on how much you want to get out of New Jersey in this cold. But you were saying the first half of January, not all that cold, but the second half was really the part that drove it home here, with the cold, and similar of what we saw in December of just last month as well.
Yeah, and we're gonna and the cold has outweighed the warmth, so we're gonna end the month on the cold side. But people who think this is the coldest January we've had or whatever,
Yeah.
I looked at some preliminary numbers through yesterday morning, so they
Right.
don't
So the
get the
30th.
cold of
Yeah.
yesterday and the cold. And for the coastal Jersey, yeah, let's just look at southern Jersey,
Sure.
southern and coastal.
Sure.
41st coldest January of the last 132. So it's barely into the top third for cold.
Yeah.
There have
Yeah.
been 40 plus Januaries colder than this. Not many in recent years, but there
Yeah.
have been some. Statewide, it looks like about the 39th coldest. But that's in part because we had 7 or so days earlier in the month where somewhere in the state hit the 50-degree month mark, and
Yeah.
two days where it hit 60. Again, I got more notes as I'm working to prepare the monthly
That's okay.
report.
Well, I think
Um,
January 7th got the 60. That was probably a 60-degree day for
January
spots.
7th and January 14th, Hamilton
14th.
got up to 62.
Okay. Wait,
That's
who got
the
up to 62?
Hamilton
Oh,
in
Hamilton got
Monmouth
up to 60.
County.
I think the sixth, if correct me if I'm wrong, that 14th was kind of excuse me. That was kind of like that day where I think there was a little bit of a sea breeze too, or an onshore wind. So like, I think the coast was, in the 40s or whatever, but Hamilton didn't get up, was able to get up to 62.
Yeah, yeah. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days between the 7th and the 22nd. Well, between the 7th and the
Sure.
14th, we had 7 days get up
Yeah.
to 50 or higher. The 22nd, we also snuck in 53 at 7 of our
Okay.
70 stations. So,
Okay.
Pete, but as you mentioned, it's the recency effect. You
Yeah.
remember what's come in the last
Right.
2 weeks,
Right.
and
Right.
you're skating or you're ice boating on the sailing on the Shrewsbury, or skating on your pond.
Yeah.
And I've had interviews on Hudson River ice this week that shut down the ferry service, and
Yeah.
you flew in and said the Chesapeake is getting choked with ice
Yeah.
up north, and the
Yeah.
Delaware
Yeah.
Bay.
Oh, the Delaware River. Yeah. Delaware Bay, Delaware River. I mean, just incredible. I don't think I've ever seen that from a plane before. I know it's happened, but just to see it from the plane
Yeah.
was incredible. I kind of wish we took a little bit of a different path. We ended up being a little far inland. I wish we were like a little more in Jersey, but that's okay. Yeah, that's just the way it was. With these temperatures, we got about 45 seconds left. And we'll get into the broader context after the break, but we didn't really break many temperature records. I mean, yes, no one's going to say it wasn't cold. It's been very cold, but we haven't really broke many records.
No, in fact, it was been 17 below up in Walpack, up in the northwest part of the state. It's not record. I think the most notable is the persistence.
Yeah.
But even there, in late 2017, 2018, we went almost 2 weeks staying below freezing, and now we're only at about a week.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, the cold isn't as cold, frankly, as it used to be.
No.
Makes it a little bit more notable. And with that, the skating has become less frequent and such. Snow, no. Snow, we've not seen a trend towards less snow, because we get these bigger events, perhaps because they're more enriched with moisture in recent years. Or think of all the 10-inch plus snows we've seen around the state just this century.
Yeah. 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 All right, great. We're going to take our break here. We'll come back on the other side with our monthly weather roundup. From college essays to graduate statements to career transitions, Jennifer Ansbach Coaching helps every learner take the next step with confidence. Whether you're a high school senior preparing for college, a graduate school applicant, or returning to school after time away, your words can open doors. Write, revise, rise. Visit JenniferAnsbach.com to get started. That's Jennifer, ANSBACH.com. And welcome back to the monthly weather roundup. We are recapping this cold for most of the month and snowy for part of the month of January here. Just a reminder, the monthly weather roundup brought to you by Jennifer Ansbach Coaching. Jennifer Ansbach Coaching helps high school seniors, graduate school applicants, and adults returning to school tell their stories with clarity and confidence. Write, revise, rise, and learn more at JenniferAnsbach.com. That's Jennifer, ANSBACH.com. All right. So putting this cold in broader context, and we touched on this on the last part here. I mean, yeah, it's cold. It's persistently cold, but in our climate changing, warming world, I mean, you said it, it's in the top third for coldest. This is, you go back to the 70s, especially, right? I mean, this was kind of par for the course at that point.
We had a couple of notable winters, 76, 77, 78, a couple in the early 80s, go back in the 60s and on back and back and back. There's absolutely indisputable evidence from not just urban centers in New Jersey, statewide, that we've warmed in midwinter multiple degrees over time, and that the coldest of the cold is warming faster than the average cold. In other words, those brutal cold, record-setting days are disappearing faster than your run-of-the-mill cold January days. So yeah, that is a changing, and it is reflected in the ice around the state. And as I mentioned as we went to break, not so much with the snow around the state. And now, perhaps with the snow staying on the ground around the state, but not the snow that's falling.
Right.
And people's perceptions, they remember the big events. But the other thing I like to point out is, the removal process. When I was growing up in
the 90s,
Jersey, in the snowiest decade of the 20th century, the 60s, you got a snowstorm and the roads were like washboards for a week or so following them. And now, if you don't have it down to bare pavement from the brining and the plowing and the other treatments, within 24 hours, people go crazy. But with that, the snow kind of fades from the memory. You're not fighting it as much. This week has been one where people have been fighting it a little bit more. So that has changed, but oftentimes people's perceptions are clouded by the fact that they remember the big ticket items from the past, and they don't recall that we went years without them occurring. Now, in terms of snow totals, this was probably the most impactful storm for most of the state since the late January, early February storm in 2021. Having said that, we had a couple of years ago, the South Jersey storms that brought you 10 inches down that way. So for you guys in the South, it hasn't been as long since you've seen those big storms in central and northern New Jersey.
Well, let's just take a step back. Monmouth County, central Jersey, right? According to Dave Robinson.
Yeah. Now, don't write me letters, folks.
Okay. All right. Because I'm just saying, you said South, but Monmouth did also get that blizzard in 2022, the coastal one. That was the one that was like 12 to 21 inches up and down the Jersey Shore. I was just wanted to make sure we include
I'll give you that. No, I'll definitely give you that.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Nothing beats the 2010 storm, though.
No, well, that one
2010 storm up the coast. Nothing beats that.
I know that. Well, and I think we've talked about this before. Like there was like a good old days from like 2009 to like the 2016, 17-ish, where we were thumping pretty good with snow for that period.
Absolutely. Yeah. 2018 had some too, but that was up in the north in March.
Well, that was that Easter, I think. Easters. Yeah, you're right.
We've had our share. We've had our share of major snowstorms in the last 25 years.
Yeah, we're still getting snow. Don't be snow lovers. We're still getting snow. Okay, what else did I want to say about temperatures? Anything else in that context there? I don't think so. I think, again, I mean, it's the snowplow removal. I put this on Facebook. I was like, you know, I don't understand why everybody's going to the grocery store, because when was the last time that you really like couldn't get out for more, like on day 3, right? Like when have you not been able to get out? And in the past, I don't know, as long as I've been alive, by day 3, you can get out and go to the store. Like, and that's because of the great job the DPWs are doing, cleaning it up, even if it's
Absolutely.
not done on day 1, by day 2, it's pretty.
Absolutely. It's such an art and science to it. There's a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
more science than people might think to than
Mhm.
just, oh, we'll plow it down. No, it's very impressive what these crews do.
Yeah.
And I'm just totally impressed with the efforts they put in. We were out the other day and doing some shopping run, and I just turned to my wife and I said, can you imagine the amount of snow that's been and ice that's been moved around
Yeah.
just in the last week? It's
Yeah.
just remarkable. And
Heck,
I don't know how those guys, they're probably still sleeping it off after,
probably so.
being up for hours and hours and hours. So
Yeah, I mean,
kudos,
I was
kudos.
on the Parkway on Monday, the 26th, when I was going to the AMS, our big weather conference. The Parkway was pretty much fine on Monday morning. Like you could go 60 miles an hour and be okay. So incredible job. Anyway, just not just snow, but precipitation as a whole for January. Outside of that event, I guess we had like one big event on the 10th about there,
Mhm.
and then that was kind of it, right?
Yeah, and then we had the two weekends ago, we had the back-to-back, the Saturday, Sunday
Yeah.
events that
Yeah.
brought 3/4 of an inch of liquid.
Okay.
It looks like along the coast and in South Jersey, it's going to be close to normal precipitation for this month, in the 3.5 to 4 inch range. When you get north, it's been drier. So it looks like overall, January is going to come in a little below normal statewide, which will make 15 of the last 17 months with below normal precipitation.
Mhm.
So we have to remember
The
we're
next topic.
still have a
Right.
drought warning
Yes.
here in New
Right.
Jersey.
Right.
Now,
Right.
coastal Jersey's better off. We haven't made any changes in recent weeks to the drought monitor, despite getting this 1.5 to 2 inches of moisture in the last 2 weeks, in part because it's locked up in the snow and ice, and it's yet to show itself in terms of replenishing groundwater, stream flow, soil moisture. So I think we're going to see some improvements when this melts, and then we'll see how much rain will follow during the melt period or subsequent to that and
Right.
see how we're going to head into the spring. I do have some numbers. The wettest locations down the coast this month have been in the 4 inch range. Red Bank, Top and Monmouth,
Okay.
4.13. Berkeley Township, 4.27 in Ocean. Hamilton, 4.26 in Atlantic. And Middle Township, 3.97. On the low end, they've been around 3 to 3.25 inches. So a very close range, not like in the summer where you got thunderstorms with wide range. And
Sure.
and that's pretty good. For the coastal areas, it looks like the average is like 3.51 climatologically, and it's a little over that for
Right.
coastal areas,
Okay.
putting it near the middle, in the middle third for precip. So, pretty good, but not enough. We're
Right.
still in a drought warning. We still have concerns that need to be met before the fire season,
Hmm.
the planting season,
Right.
the lawn and garden watering seasons come along.
Yeah, and similar to last year, right? I mean, we're putting a lot of pressure on the spring to come through, and last spring it did at the end in May. We had, what was it, the fifth
Mhm.
wettest May on record, something like that, right?
Seventh
Seventh, sorry, yeah,
statewide.
seventh. So we're gonna need one of those because we're fine. Once you get to March, water usage starts to tick up a little bit, right? Sun starts to suck a little more out of the ground, then especially
Mhm.
April and May as we go forward here.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, like, generally, how does snowfall impact your thought process on the drought monitor? I know you said you didn't alter anything, but is there a difference between snow falling and snow maybe covering the ground as opposed to just raining.
Yeah, it's more wait and see. We know that that snow is going to melt. We don't know the pace at which it's going to melt. We have to look at what the soils were prior to the snow. Were they frozen, in which case it will run off. But if they were a little softer, will the snow melt percolate in? The snow is an insulator, so it's keeping the ground warmer and therefore helping out when it melts that more of it may soak in instead of just running off. So those are the things we take into account. The other thing we have to take into account with moisture right now is ice jam flooding. We have
Okay.
to worry about things melting out too fast. There's a lot of ice in the rivers compared to normal. This
Yep.
is something they deal with in upstate New York and New England every year. But down
Right.
here, there have been cases in the past where there's been some ice jam flooding. And that's going to, we're going to have to keep an eye, see if this melt is well behaved
Yes.
or it starts running amok, in which case that's going to increase flooding concerns. Now, for the coastal and south areas, not as much as when you get over to the Delaware Valley and up to the Raritan,
Mhm.
Passaic, and north and central Jersey. But there could be issues even down closer to the coast.
Well, for the bays, we're talking about, any kind of tidal flooding brings some of that ice onto dry, what's normally dry ground.
Mhm.
And also, too, but salt water could very well freeze. I mean, salt water has a lower freezing point than pure water, but, I think it's 28.5 thereabouts for salt
Yeah.
water. I mean, it's been well below 28.5 most of the time. So
Mhm.
that's another concern, too. And I just with some of the one of the towns I spoke with, they're like, well, we might have to salt after it floods, because you don't want it to freeze up. So that necessarily doesn't have to do with ice jams, but all in that same water and ice situation, that we have.
And let's face it, as people listen to this in the next week or two, the outlook for the first half of February is pretty high confidence that temperatures are going to remain below normal here
Yep.
in the eastern third of the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let,
And you're good.
I was going to say, let me add, the rest of the country is roasting.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, the Rockies and points west are in a snow drought. There's very little, only around Yellowstone is the snowpack about normal. Everywhere else, it's down to half to three-quarters of normal, which is
Yeah.
really bad because that's their reservoir.
Right.
And you want another example? We were colder this week than the North Slope of Alaska for a couple of days because they had mild air. And if you really wanted to go to the beach it may sound controversial this winter, Greenland has been
Oh,
incredibly warm. Now, I think we mentioned I was there in
you have been in
September for a
Greenland.
couple of weeks, and we had temperatures in the 30s and 40s.
Wow.
It's been in the 30s up there. They've been running 20 to 30 degrees above normal on the
Yeah.
west coast of Greenland. So there are a lot of parts around, and the Arctic as itself, you know, the Arctic drained all of its cold down here.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's been anomalously mild. Now, still colder than here, but most times, but up near the poles, it's been well above normal compared to the
Yeah.
averages, and here well below. And then you go south of here, in the subtropics and tropics, it's been above normal. Australia's had a major heat wave, but that's, another hemisphere. But less people think that everyone else is in the ice box. Relative to normal, Eastern North America this week was colder than anywhere else on the planet relative to their
Right.
normal, not in
Right.
absolute terms.
And just to go to our earlier point, even with that, we're still not breaking record cold temperatures all that much, even with that being the coldest spot relative to average,
Yeah.
on Earth.
Great
So,
point, Joe. Great
yeah.
point.
So, all right, we're gonna wrap it up for this month. Tell everybody where they can find out more about what's happening in New Jersey with weather and climate.
Yeah, thanks. If you want to look at current conditions and temperatures in particular, NJ weather.org, njweather.org. If you want to look at the past storms, we post maps and tabular data from every snowstorm, every event that's 2 inches or greater somewhere in the state. You can find that on the state climate website, njclimate.org. Look to the top right under features, and you can look at all the snow events and what fell in your county, maybe in your neighborhood for that matter.
That's correct. Yes, very good maps there. Shout out to Dan Zauer for putting together a lot of those maps as well with the snowfall and everything.
And huge, I can't forget Matt Gerbish, the assistant state
Right, absolutely,
climatologist,
sure.
who does incredible work checking up and doing quality control on these, and then Dan for producing the map. So terrific team we've got.
That's absolutely correct. All right, so we will be back with everybody somewhere around the end of February here, and we're probably going to continue to talk about how cold it's been, given what we said a few minutes ago. So take care, everybody. Be well, and we'll chat with you soon.